So when you go on to those weekly notes, you're going to see, you'll see that what I talked about during lecture. You'll see the session video, which I get the next week. And then I post some shorter videos just showing skills or things that, questions that came up or things that I thought would be useful for you to see. And they're really short. And it's just like a screen recording of me doing that skill. And then if I get any questions afterwards, I may post some videos about that. And one thing I got a question about is somebody from headquarters. They weren't allowed to install GitHub Desktop. It just wasn't on the approved list yet. It's just kind of a procedure you need to do to go through that for your center if it's not on there. It's a really standard thing, so it shouldn't be a problem to get it on that list. But they had Git Kraken, which is another interface to can be used as an interface to GitHub. And so I showed how to connect Git Kraken and how to use that. And one kind of interesting thing, or maybe useful thing to see, is me connecting up my GitHub to Git Kraken on my computer. And it's literally, I downloaded Git Kraken, I log into GitHub from Git Kraken, showed in the video, I don't know how long it is, maybe a minute and a half, and then boom, I'm ready to go. That's it. So super easy to do that authentication. I mention that because if you go on to the online course that I showed that talks about how to connect up RStudio and connect that to Git and then connect that to GitHub, it's like pages and pages, and it can be really miserable. I don't really see any point to that because, first off, the RStudio Git graphical interface is not that great, honestly. And then why would you suffer when it takes literally just logging into your account with GitHub Desktop or Git Kraken? Now, Git Kraken, it's popular. It's got a huge number of bells and whistles. I have too many bells and whistles, even for me, and I'm working with repositories all the time. But more importantly, it's not all that useful, I think, for most of us, because you would have to pay $50 a year to get access to a NOAA Enterprise GitHub server or to an internal GitHub server. And for most of us in our work, we're going to be doing one of those things, so we would have to pay. And why would you just use GitHub Desktop? Also, using something that's not associated with GitHub means that we're sharing our credentials with an outside application. Again, I don't really see the point if GitHub makes its own interface that works great. So I recommend just sticking with GitHub Desktop. Okay, and great. So let's see, what else? Right. So right now, if you go to week 2, you're not going to see much. I'll add those when I get the video and when I, answer questions. You can go there. These are the notes, what I'm going to cover today. So as usual, as last week, use the chat to ask questions. And please, anyone who can answer the question, just jump in. If you know the answer, help them out, answer that. I'll try to follow it, but I'm also lecturing, so it's kind of tough to do two things at once. And I'm going to try to get through as much material as I can today. I got a lot of skills to cover today. And then after the lecture at 11, I'm going to stay on, and that's a chance for you to throw me more questions. You can unmute yourself and ask me questions. I can just stay on, just kind of work with you in smaller groups. Okay, great. One other kind of logistics thing is that I'm going to be talking about, see if I can do this with, open with okay. Some features of GitHub, really useful for teams. And one of those is working within organizations. And if you learn by doing and want to sort of play around with a GitHub organization, in the info that I sent out via email, there's like a classroom GitHub link. If you click that, it makes a repo here. You can see everyone's sort of repo. But the key thing for me is then it gives me kind of a ping that you're there, and then I can invite you to this. So you can click that link in the email, or just email me your GitHub username, and I'll add you. Okay. And then regarding GitHub accounts, for this workshop, you can just use like a throwaway account and delete it at the end of the workshop. If you want, you don't have to have your official, GitHub account, or, if you are going to have an account with some kind of, enterprise, NOAA enterprise thing, you don't have to use that. We're just learning the key skills today in these sessions. Okay, so what am I going to cover today? So I'm going to cover the 3 key skills that you need to work with Git and GitHub, and pretty much that's it. With those, the 3 skills I'm going to teach today, and they're pretty simple. You've already learned one of them. You can do basically everything that you need, and you won't get into trouble with things, with doing unexpected things to your file system. So I'm going to talk about those 3 skills and show you how to use them. And then I am going to show some key GitHub skills, just kind of working with issues, working with releases. This is going to make you much more efficient in your personal work. And then if you're working in a team, these kind of things are really key collaboration tools. Things I won't cover today, and if I do cover them, I think I'll just do it over video. I'm not going to cover branches. Now, if you were to Google, Git tutorial, they're going to jump right into branches early on. And they're also going to talk about working from Git from the command line. These things will get you into trouble pretty fast, and they're not actually necessary for basically what we're doing as NIM scientists. Even I am coding all the time. I'm maintaining 50+ repositories, and I have branches on maybe 2 of those. And they are kind of my enterprise level projects where I have branches. So not really necessary for most of what you're doing. But I am going to talk about them a little bit and explain why, if you have tried using them, why it seems like a demon takes over your file system if you play around with not knowing exactly how they work. Okay, and maybe that information alone will help you use them without unexpected things happening. All right, okay. On the notes, I put in 2 examples if you just want to see how GitHub is used throughout the federal government. It's being used a lot in other agencies. It hasn't been, we're just starting to adopt it in NOAA, but it's been used for a long time in other agencies. The college scorecard is a pretty cool example from the Department of Education. This is, you can get all kinds of information about student outcomes in colleges, and it's really kind of amazing. If you click that link, it won't be obvious that this is all powered from GitHub. But if you scroll down to the bottom and you look at the links and you say, hey, go to the data, it's quickly going to be apparent that this is on GitHub. And in fact, the whole web page is being powered from GitHub. We're going to learn that later, how you can do that. And And then for us in NOAA Fisheries, if you're not aware of the Fisheries Integrated Tools project, this is kind of our start getting these. I'm a member. I'm not the leader in any way. To just make you aware of that. And then this is an example of some of the tools. And today we're going to learn some of the aspects of this that you will see. I'll just click this for a sec so you can. Right. So this is a tool from that integrated toolbox. And then off on the side, you can see there are links to issues. So that if people have, they need to make a comment or there's a problem with the tool, it's really easy for people to write up information about what's going on so that the developers can fix that. Okay. All right. So let's go to our, back to our schematic. So where we are here, how GitHub works. So we have the platform where we're working on our code. I'm talking about RStudio. If you were working, say, in Python, that might be that could be a different platform. You could do a Python in RStudio, but I think you use more a Python-specific one. And then, so that's on your local computer. And then you are committing your changes. So you're noting what you're working on and what changes you made, why you made your changes. As you go along, you keep committing those to your local history. That allows you to see what you're doing, but also allows you to go back in time if you need to get rid of a change. And then when you're ready, you push those up to a GitHub site. What site that is depends on what you're working on. For this class, we're using just the public github.com, okay? So we're teaching, we're learning, it's fine to use that. When we're working in NOAA on a, kind of official project, that is more likely to be a internal GitHub server. If we're working on something where, it's not really appropriate for us to just have that out in the public, we're working with data that can't be leaving a NOAA server, then we would be working on internal GitHub server. It looks just the same to what we're doing. Like as a user, it's not really going to look any different, okay? It's just the URL is not going to be github.com. It's going to be your internal URL. If you are working on a product or tool that is meant to be a public tool, then you're going to be working on probably a NOAA GitHub Enterprise server. That hasn't completely rolled out, but we're going in that direction. You'd be working on either of those. And then in many situations, we may be collaborating with people who are just using the github.com. So you still often use that. Okay. And then how are you as kind of a user interacting with this Git verse? So if you're just like a team member, let's say you're program manager, but you or project manager, but you're not like the person actually writing the code, you might be interacting just right here. You're kind of watching what's happening, and then you're discussing things like, hey, this graph, I mean, this has some issues. Well, could we do the graph this way? So maybe you put an issue in, hey, and you say, hey, this is what I'd like. You kind of draw on a napkin what you think that graph you think it should look like, take a picture, and that gets uploaded in the issue. And then the person who's working on it, you tag them, or you call them and say, hey, I put this issue, can you look at it? Maybe it works that way. It doesn't have to be fully online. And then they work on it, and then they would, they would discuss in that issue about how to do it. So that creates this wonderful record of how you tried to deal with things and all your discussions about that. So instead of going back and trying to search for this email thread that's mixed in with everything that's not project related, it's just all in the collaboration platform. So some people will only be interacting here, and then other people are actually writing the code or writing the text or working on the data, and they're working here and then pushing here. So they're kind of different roles that people might take. All right, key skills. So just to review, what you're going to need to install is RStudio and GitHub Desktop. For the purpose of the workshop, you could also use RStudio Cloud. I showed that last week. Look at the links of how to do that. I posted some videos on how to use RStudio Cloud to do all this. It's not hard. It's very easy. Okay. And then I put optional here. You can tell RStudio where Git is installed without doing even the push and the pull. So you're not interacting with GitHub. You're just interacting with Git on your local computer. That's an optional thing you can do, but you don't have to. I'll post some videos of illustrating how that can be helpful if that's something you want to do. But right now, just think about these three things. And then there's a review also that how to create a So actually, I'm going to go here. I'm going to start here, skill 1. Clone your repo to your own computer. That's your skill number 1. So let's see how to do that. And I'm going to also do this, how to create a repo too, just so you see that again. Okay, so here I am on, I'm on GitHub. I'm going to go over here. So when you look here, you see github.com, but you see this right here. You don't see my name. So that's how I know I'm not actually on my GitHub. It would have my username here if I were. So I'm going to go over here in the corner. I'm going to that. Okay, good. So, and then you see here your repositories. Now I click that. Okay, now here we go. GitHub EEHolmes. Yay, that's what we want. That's me. So I'm going to just create a blank repository so you can see that again and pull that down. So just going to do new, no template. Let's call it week 2. Okay. I'm going to make it public. And this is the key thing. You want to click that README right there. You might as well, if you're coding, add that git ignore. You might not be coding, so you might not need this. But I'm going to pretend that I am going to be coding in R, so I might as well add this. Again, it's not essential. It's just telling Git what things you don't want to push, what things that just are local, specific to your local computer, and that you're not going to be pushing up to the public site. Okay, but you do need the README so that you can clone it onto your computer. So I'm going to create that. All right, so now I have this repository. It doesn't have much. It just has a README file. You can see, if I click there, you can see what it looks like. That's it, just hashtag week 2. So let's go ahead and get this onto my computer using GitHub. So skill number 1. So I am going to copy that URL. I'm going to go to GitHub Desktop. I am then going to go here to add clone repository. That's what the jargon is. Then I'm going to go to URL and paste that here. Then I'm going to make sure it's in the right place. I'm going to have all my repositories in my documents in a folder called GitHub. This is actually rather important. You don't want to have your repositories kept in any place where you have automatic backups going on. You're going to have to figure out a different way to do your backups for your repositories. So then I clone. Okay, so it's in there. There we go, week 2. So it took a little bit. Oh, it's there. Let me widen this up a little. Okay. So that is your skill 1. Okay, I realize those are a little bit maybe hard to remember. Look at that a few times. So you're going here. You can also do file clone. That may be an easier way to remember it. I usually go to that little arrow, but file clone may be an easier way to remember. So it's file clone and then URL. You could do github.com over here because your GitHub desktop is linked to your GitHub account, and you would see a repository on GitHub that you want to clone. You would see it there. I did URL because I want to show you one skill that's going to kind of always work depending. You may be on a different GitHub server that wouldn't show up here, but if you use the URL, you copy that, that's always going to work. Okay, great. So that's our skill number 1. Let's go back here. Skill number 1, clone your own repo to your computer. This is important. It's your own. Why is that important that it's your own? Because it has the information that this is your repo. You have the permissions to push things up there. So if you could put in a URL from one of my repositories, but then and that would be fine, it'd get onto your computer. But then if you tried to push it up, it would say, no way, you can't do that. You don't have permission to do that. And then you'd be like, well, why did that happen? That's what Eli showed. Well, it happened because it wasn't your own repo. You need to make sure that it's github.com, your name, your repo. I'm going to show you how, if you want to copy something of mine, get it onto your computer and say, use it to build something else. You're like, hey, I like that website. I want to use that template, but I want to put my own content there. I'm going to show you how you could copy mine and use it as a template. All right, so that was skill 1. Skill 2. We just got this repository onto my computer. How do I get that into RStudio so I can start working on that? Okay, so now I'm in RStudio. I'm going to go up to Project, New Project, because it doesn't exist yet. Don't have it in RStudio. So click that. Take a little. All right, so I'm not creating a new directory. The directory exists. It's just not a project yet. So that, browse to where it is. As I said, my repositories on GitHub are always here in my documents. And then there it is, week 2, and open. Okay, create. All right, there we go. Now we can see it. I happen to have, if I click under more, and you see down here, WebEx is hiding my stuff. Okay, you see I have show hidden files. So because I have that checked, I see this .git. So you might not see that when you do this, but just go here and say show hidden, then you'll see that. Another thing you will see under mine that you probably won't see under yours when you first set it up. So you're not going to see this Git tab. It's because I, by default, have RStudio set up to work with Git. My RStudio knows where my Git is. But that's okay. Just, you don't need that tab. We're going to be using GitHub Desktop. Okay. Let's go back here. Okay, so now that was our skill number 2. You're 2/3 of the skills that are going to get us 95%, sometimes 100% of the way of everything we need to do. Next skill is to be able to commit and push changes up to GitHub through GitHub Desktop. So I'm going to go and make a change. So I clicked on RStudio. Here I go. Here's my README. That's my change. I clicked save. And now I'm going to go over to GitHub Desktop. And I see the change. As I mentioned in week 1, I don't ever push these up to GitHub because these are kind of personal to my computer. If I'm working on my desktop, I might have things set up a little differently. So this is just, it has some things that are specific to your local computer, so don't push that up there. So I just unchecked something I don't want to push up. So note there, and now I do commit. Excellent. Now I can look at the history of this, and I see, okay, 8 minutes ago, and there's not much history here because, you know, just starting, but if this is a big project, you'd have a long history. You can see everything that you've been doing. And then you see this little arrow here, and it's showing you that that commit has not been pushed up to GitHub. And I go, I think I could do that, but I usually push from here. That's it. Okay, that's our third skill, pushing. Kind of related to this, this third skill is also pulling. So if somebody else made a commit up to GitHub, you, if you click this fetch origin, it's going to check GitHub and see if there are changes on GitHub that are different than what are on your local computer. And you just click this button here, and it's going to pull it in. And then when you click history, you'll see the history of those other changes. So now let's see how we use these 3 basic skills to do typical things that we want to do using GitHub. So we want to copy a repository on GitHub and use it for something else. So this is a really common thing. This is a really nice thing that code sharing allows is somebody else creates something and you're like, oh, wow, that's great. I want to do almost exactly that. So I want to take what they created and change the content and make my own thing. Or I just want to get a copy of it and so I can play with it. I'm not part of their team. I'm not going to be improving their code. That's not my goal. I just want a copy so I can work with it myself. And if I'm going to be building on it, I want to be able to push it. I want it in my own GitHub account so I can push changes up to it. So this is how you do that. So let's go here, and you kind of go anywhere, but I'm going to show you in our organization. So here we go. Let's just see what I got here. Okay. So I'm just going to copy this. Oh, I see. It's okay. I'll just give it a different name. I'm a little worried I used the same name for the thing that I just created. Okay. Okay. So now notice this is not me. You don't see my name here, so it's not mine. By the way, it could be mine. Sometimes you want to make a copy of your own thing and use that as a template. What I'm showing you now will work fine for your own repositories too. You can copy your own repositories this way and use them as a template to build new things. So the key thing, you're going to copy this URL. So I'm copying that. Now I'm going to go back. So here you see I'm not on my account. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go to my repositories. Here I'm in the right place. It's got my username. And here's the key thing. I'm going to go here to plus, and now I'm going to say import. That's what I'm doing. I'm importing. That's what I import. And now I'm going to call it week 2. It says it's available, but it's too close. I'm going to use okay. Good. And now I begin the import. If it's a really big thing that you're importing, it will take a little bit, but you don't have to sit there on the website. It'll email you when it's done. This is nice and small, so it just takes a moment. So now it gives me the link. All right, so now I can use that skill 1, pull this into my computer, and the thing that I pulled in is linked to this new repository I've created. You see it's my repository. It has my name, and it's right there, but it's a copy of the thing that was on the organization. So that is how you're going to copy things that you want to adapt, build off of. All right. Okay. So I have an optional method here for those of you who do have Git linked into RStudio. If you do, you can read that and see how to do that within RStudio. So I mentioned that you can use a existing repository of your own to make that a template for something. And it's exactly the same of what I've shown, except that that URL you're going to copy is your own repository. So like when I created this website for 2021, I copied the URL for the 2020. I imported that and then pulled that into my local computer and then changed the content as I needed, because my 21 website is pretty similar to my 2020. So that's how you do it. Question, does Git keep a log of when you copied someone's repository and what version their repository it was? No, it doesn't. So it's, it's just a copy of the status of their repository at the time that you copied it. So I'll talk a little bit about that when I talk about the difference between cloning and forking. So another thing that we often want to do is to use, like we have an existing folder on our computer and we want to make that a repository, especially for you, those of you who are doing coding, you have projects and they're established, but they're not on GitHub, and you'd like to get them into a version control system. So how do you do that? So I'm going to show you a way, and it's going to feel a little hacky. Feels a little hacky to me. But the good thing about this is that you're not going to run into any trouble. So below, I show other ways to do it that are kind of more sort of proper ways to do it. But what I found is, I have, even though I work with Git and GitHub all the time, I've got a lot of things in my head, other things in my head, and remembering exactly how to interact with GitHub is sometimes gets pushed out. And then if I try to do things like I try to remember, what was the right way? Some of these right ways, if you do, or what to me feels intuitive, I actually end up messing things up. And it's not a big deal. It just takes me extra time and it is annoying. Whereas if I use this thing that feels a little kludgy, I can never mess up. And I don't have to remember anything new. I just remember my 3 skills, work fast, and So here's how I do it. I have a big folder. It's got a bunch of things. I want to make it a repository. So I'm going to use fill number 1 and make that blank repository on GitHub. It's empty. Only thing in there is the README. Pull that down to my computer. So let's say I looked at week 1 over here. So where did I put it? Oh, I always know where I put it. It's in Documents, GitHub, right there. Good. Okay, it's right here. It's week 2. There it is. It's blank. There's nothing in there. I can just put everything I want in there. In that other folder, I just copy it in here or just move it in here, and then it's going to show up on GitHub Desktop, and I push it. Really simple. So that workflow works for me until I decide, oh, Eli, really, you ought to do things the way they're designed to be done, and I do it the way it's designed to be done, or I'll make some mistake, and I have to fix that because I was working too quickly. Okay. So I would suggest just, for most of us, this is going to work fine, and then you don't get yourself into trouble. Or you can, if you like remembering other workflows, you can just look here. It's really quite simple. Okay. So now what I want to show you is how you deal with a merge conflict in GitHub Desktop. This is a really nice feature of using GitHub Desktop, or really any of these interfaces, you know, like GitKraken and others. There's a whole bunch of them. They're going to help you out with your merge conflicts. So I'm going to make a merge conflict, and you'll see what it looks like. So so let's see. I've got this. So, yeah, week 2. Okay, great. Okay, so here we go. I've got this, and I'm going to edit this here. So I'm going to put change made on GitHub. And scroll down. I'm not going to put a note here. I just let it go with the default. Commit that change. Great. Okay, so I've got that change made here. If I go here, it doesn't know about it yet. You can see it's not giving me any notification. It will eventually. I have mine set up. It's going to sort of, you know, phone home about every 5 minutes. So it's going to take a little while, and then when it does, it would notify me here. But let's say I didn't know that change was there. And unbeknownst to me, I'm working here, and I'm doing a different change. So I said change made on my. So now I have a conflict, right? I had a change on GitHub, and I have a change here. Now, you know, this is kind of an example. Of course, I know that there's a change made on GitHub because I was the one who did it. But imagine you have a teammate who did it, or maybe you pushed it up the day before from your desktop at work, and now you're at home teleworking on your laptop, and you forgot that you had pushed some changes up and that you needed to pull them into your laptop at home. Okay? So, but anyhow, I'm in this situation where there's a change on GitHub that's not on my local computer, and I've just made a change on that same file on my local computer. So, yeah, I work away, and I commit it. Great, everything goes fine. And now I do, okay, let's push it up there. Okay, so it says, I'm like, oh dear. Okay, now I know that I'm about to have some problems, but I'm going to keep going. I could decide, oh, yikes, oh, that's right. Okay, and I could do something now, but I'm not. I'm going to keep going because I assume nothing bad's going to happen. Okay, so now I see right here, I see, uh-oh, I've got things on GitHub and I need to push also. Okay, maybe there's a merge conflict about to happen. But maybe the change on GitHub is a different file, right? Okay, so anyway, I'm going to keep going forward. This isn't bad. Nothing bad has happened here. Okay, so now this is the nice thing of working with an interface is that GitHub Desktop is not going to do anything to your file system. It's just going to warn you. So it's not going to change your files. It's warning you, and it's giving you some options about what you want to do. So now I'm like, So if I was the one who made the change on GitHub, I could be like, oh, that's right, I made that change yesterday. And so it gives me some options. So one option, I could say, so main is this my local computer, and the jargon here is, unless you know it, like, it'd be really hard to guess. But origin is the remote one. So it's asking you, do you want me to keep the one that's on the remote one and wipe out the local one? Or do you want me to keep the local one and wipe out the remote one? So you could choose one. Maybe you know which one you want to keep. You could also do, yikes, I don't want to do anything. I want to abort this whole idea, and then I'm just going to fix it myself. That's another option. So usually for me, what I'm going to do, I would say, 75% of the time, I know which one I want to keep, because I tend to commit pretty often. So that it's not like I'm going to have these huge changes to deal with. Usually it's something small, and it's usually easier for me to say, oh, right, okay, it was just a few lines here. I'll keep the one that I had up on GitHub, and then I'll just, go back and re-put in the changes. So that's, I would say, about 75% of the time. And then other times I need to kind of merge the two different changes. And let's go ahead and do that. So, okay, so these two are easy. If I were to click one of these, it's just going to use that one, and then it's just I click a button, and that merge conflict is done. But let's think that's what I want to do. Okay. So the other thing is, like, if you need to kind of figure out which of the changes you want, then you click that open in RStudio, and it gives you this. And it shows you with this code here that it is added to your file. So this is now really in your file, right? And so it can feel like, Git, you just messed up my code by putting all this garbage in there. So you have to search through and find these. It's super easy here because I only have one line, but imagine if you had 1,000 lines of code. So you are searching through to find these. And then it's going to show you, this is the one on your local computer, and this is the one on the remote. And then, you decide either which one you want to keep, or, how you want to change it. So I look here, and I can see, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that. You want to get rid of all these, like this stuff. You don't want that. That's like really in your code now. So you need to get rid of all these things. It's just telling you where the conflicts are. Get rid of that. Now I save it. There we go. Now, good. And now I cleaned out all that stuff. I cleaned out all the conflicts. I can do commit merge. So that's how you're going to deal with a merge conflict. They are a bit of a hassle, but you can see, just sort of be patient, decide which of those 3 options you want to choose, or 4, I guess. You can always just abort and then fix it, and kind of go sleuthing and see what the problem is, where the conflict is. Okay. Yes, Paul, yes. It is easy once you figured it out, and I suffered so mightily before I figured out, oh, that's how it works. That's how I should be doing it. Okay. How are we doing with our time? Okay, we got 10 more minutes. It's clearly I'm going to be covering some of this material next week. That's okay. This is really critical stuff to learn so that you don't suffer. Okay. So yeah. So that's it. That's it. Learn those skills, and basically those 3 really easy skills I showed at the beginning, you're going to be able to do everything. And if you get into the merge conflict, watch this video. And I have some more info, like what I just showed. I have that written out lower down in these notes. All right, so let's talk about branches. If you were to Google a tutorial on Git, like, I don't know, 2nd lesson, 3rd lesson, they're going to tell you about branches. And for most of you on this call, I know that branches are going to conflict with your normal workflow of how you interact with your file system. So most of you should steer clear of branches in the beginning. And then if you are working on a big project where you do need that feature, then I would say, study it a little more. I've got material from last year. I'll put some more videos to talk about how to use this. So the reason that this causes difficulty for us is something they don't tell you in the tutorials. So when you use a branch, using this feature called checkout. So it's like you make a copy of that code, and then you're going to work on that copy, and you can merge that back in. Sounds great, right? It is great. But like when you hear about this and hear it described, our tendency is to think of like, oh, so we have our main code, right? And then magically it creates this copy, this alternate universe that we're going to be working with that doesn't interfere with our main file system over here. Okay? So we just wander off to this alternate universe and we can do things, but this universe over here, which is our kind of our file system. When I say file system, I mean like if I were to click here and go, to one of my documents here, and I kind of, click on one of these, go to a file. That's what I think of as my, file system. That's there. I look there. It's permanent. When I create a branch, I'm just going off in this kind of alternate world where I can play and I don't affect my, my main file system. Okay, so that's not how it works. When you create a branch, it's altering your file system. So let's say I create a branch and I'm playing around with creating a whole new structure for my project. So I create a branch and I delete a whole bunch of things and I rewrite things just because I'm trying a new structure. So now I'm on this sort of branch. So this, if I were in Git, I could click here and it gives me, hey, create this new branch. I could do that. Copy of that code. But the thing is, like, when I do all that, it's actually changing it within my file system. The information to get back to the way it was is all in this Git folder. So I can always go back to the way it was. But if I navigate here on my laptop and I look, once I've switched to that branch, so let's say I was working in ATSD library and I clicked on that, and I'm not working on my code, I'm doing something else, I'll be like, oh my God, all my files are gone. What happened? You know, Git, the daemon Git destroyed things, because I was thinking of my branch as this alternate universe. Whereas what happened when I switched to that branch is I said, okay, make this folder this. And unless I tell Git to switch back to the main, my files are not going to be there. And the reason this interferes with your workflow is that, for most of you, I bet, is that you probably have things like this in your code, where you might have a folder and you have like all your common functions or all your data in some folder, and now another project is going to source those common things or source that data, or you use that project for other things than just coding and playing around, right? So you expect when you go to that folder, it has your main world. It doesn't have the branch. One of the branches is alternate sandbox. Yeah, but now if you switch to that branch, you have just broken every line of code that has something like this. That is, like if I did a branch on common, if that's a project, I've now destroyed everything, because when I switched to that branch, I really changed my file system. So that's why if you work with branches, you need to be you need to have changed your workflow a little bit. So number one, you wouldn't have lines like this. So what if you forgot and you left it in the branch state, right? Everything like that would break, so you can't have that kind of workflow. Secondly, if you're using a backup system, you can see how that would be really disastrous, right? You switch to a branch and suddenly you've backed up, you have backed up this alternate state where you deleted all your files, right? As soon as you switch back to main, you get that back, but that would be pretty alarming if you look at that backup, or if it's like a shared file system. Yeah. So, so you need to change your workflow a little bit if you're working with branches. Like I said, I use them, but I use them selectively on things where I need them. Okay, great. How are we doing here? Okay, a few more minutes. Okay, so I see. Thank you for answering these questions. Great, great, great. Yes, excellent. Thanks, Megan, for answering that. Okay, so now in the last few minutes, I'm going to hop on to GitHub and show you issues. And then next week, I'm going to go through, I'll repeat the issues thing, but I want to show you this so that you can start playing with this in your own repositories, learn by doing. So, okay, so we go here. I'm actually going to jump over. Any of you who've used the classroom link will be on this, we'll see the organization. You'll see this right here. So if you want to play around there, you can play around there. And then here, we can also use the discussion feature. So if you're going to be using GitHub within a team, you're going to be using this organization feature so you can have discussions and shared repositories. So I'm going to show this now from this organization that you are all on if you've used that classroom link. If you want to get on, you're not on, you want to play around with this, just email me, I'll get you on. I need your GitHub user name. After the workshop, I'll delete it. This is just a sandbox for us to play around in. Okay, so let's see the issues, how we're going to use that. So if I go to a repository here, and I click on issues, welcome. Okay, yeah. So I want to do new issue. So, okay, so I'm going to just say, hey, the plot function And so it could be just that. But a nice thing is you actually put those little tick marks that make formats things into code. You don't have to remember that. I'm sure one of these will do it for you. So, you know, plot 1 to 10. So that's the code. So the cool thing about this with the issues and adding the code that I love, I always put a really short, reproducible example. Even if I'm the one who put the issues in there, you know, invariably I'm going to forget how to replicate it. And then I suffer trying to replicate it. So if I found a bug, I found an issue, if I can put in a quick code, a piece of code that's going to replicate it, it's going to help my future self. So, you know, let's add a title. And this might be to myself. It's not necessarily a team. I find this super easy. Whenever I think of something or I find an issue, I just put it in there. And now on that repo, I can see the issues. Okay? Great. I'll add you once we finish the lecture, Daniel. And great. And just play around with that. It's super intuitive. And once you, you know, you can click on it, see what it was. You're like, I don't like it. I don't think it's a real issue. You can just close it. You can add a comment. I find this really useful if, like, especially like if I'm working with a group of people and we're having different discussions, or I may be having a discussion with myself, like different things. And I'm putting all the comments there. It's so great. And then you go back. You see exactly how you dealt with that issue or didn't, why you didn't. This is one of the most useful features I find. Okay, so go ahead, play around with that. Like I said, if you are on the organization, or if you did that classroom link, you've got a repository already on the organization. You can play around with the issues. Also, feel free to use the organization to, if you go onto Teams, that's where we can discuss. I've got the workflow here. I'm going to post things, you know, as I post things, you know, I put little notes here. Please feel free to ask questions there. I can, you know, address them here. If GitHub is sending you too many notifications, it's kind of obnoxious that way. Just go into settings and turn that off. All right, so that's the end for the lecture today. I'm going to stop recording, and I will stay on and answer any questions. And then next week, I'm going to finish up this material. We're going to get on GitHub, play with some key things. This releases feature is super helpful. It's not just releases for code. Oh, you can go back in time in a way that it's so useful, I find.